I heard noises in my house. Then I saw the hidden camera. I never believed in ghosts. I still don't. But what happened in my house last month made me question everything. It started with the noises. Strange, almost imperceptible sounds, like a door creaking open when I knew I had locked it, the faint shuffle of footsteps in the hallway at night, whispers I couldn't quite make out. At first, I chalked it up to my imagination or the old bones of my house settling in. But then things started disappearing. My car keys weren't where I left them. My phone was found in the kitchen when I knew I'd left it on my nightstand. Small, seemingly insignificant things, but unsettling nonetheless. One night, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to the sound of a chair scraping against the floor downstairs. My heart pounded as I lay frozen in bed. I reached for my phone, but it wasn't on the nightstand again. I knew I had placed it there this time. Summoning courage, I grabbed the baseball bat from under my bed and tiptoed down the stairs. The house was still. Too still. My living room was just as I had left it. No intruder. No sign of forced entry. But something felt off. The next day, I was determined to figure out what was going on. I checked all the locks, installed new ones, and even put a chair under my bedroom door handle before going to sleep. But the noises continued. Then something happened that made my blood run cold. I was watching TV in my living room when my cat, Luna, started hissing at the corner of the room. Her fur bristled as she stared at nothing. Just a shelf. But as I followed her gaze, my stomach lurched. Nestled between books and decorative items, something caught my eye. A tiny, barely visible black lens. A camera. I stood there, my mind racing. How long had it been there? Who put it there? Was someone watching me? I didn't hesitate. I grabbed a cloth, yanked the camera out, and smashed it against the coffee table. But as I examined the remains, I realized something even more terrifying. This wasn't the only one. Over the next hour, I searched every inch of my house. I found 3 more cameras, one behind my TV, one inside a vent, and one horrifyingly close to my bed. I called the police immediately. The officer who arrived took one look at the cameras and asked if I had any recent maintenance work done. That's when it hit me. A month ago, I had hired a contractor through an online service to repair some drywall in my bedroom. It was a random hire. A guy named Ethan, polite and professional. I barely paid attention as he worked. Now, I was realizing my mistake. The police traced the cameras back to a remote server, but the owner had wiped it clean before they could track him. I moved out the next day, staying with a friend while I installed new security measures. I never heard from Ethan again. But to this day, I can't shake the feeling that somewhere, somehow, someone was watching. And maybe still is. Even after moving out, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. The knowledge that my every move had been monitored, maybe for weeks, maybe longer, left me feeling exposed in a way I had never known before. I stayed with my best friend, Rachel, while the police continued their investigation. I barely slept. Every shadow in her apartment felt sinister, every sound amplified by my paranoia. Even though I had gotten rid of the cameras, I still felt observed. Then, 3 days later, I received an email from an unknown sender. "Why did you break my cameras?" A chill ran through me. I didn't respond, of course, but my heart pounded as I stared at the screen. A second email arrived a minute later. "You should have just played along. Now it's too late." My hands trembled as I deleted the messages and called the police. The officer who had initially handled my case, Detective Morris, told me they were working on tracing the email, but since it had been sent through an anonymous service, it wouldn't be easy. "Keep your guard up," he warned. "If you notice anything suspicious, call me immediately." I didn't need to wait long. That night, Rachel and I were watching TV when she suddenly gasped. "What?" I asked, my stomach twisting. She pointed at her phone. Someone had sent her a text from an unknown number. The message was a photo, a blurry shot of me sitting on her couch. I whipped around, staring at the windows and door, but everything was locked. No one could have taken that photo. At least, no one inside the apartment. Rachel grabbed her phone with shaking fingers and called 911 while I rushed to check the peephole. The hallway was empty, but when I opened the door and stepped outside, I saw it. Outside, a small black USB drive. I hesitated. My breath caught in my throat. With trembling hands, I picked it up and rushed back inside, locking the door behind me. When the police arrived, they took the drive and plugged it into a laptop. What they found made my skin crawl. The files contained hours, no, days, of footage of me. From inside my own home. Footage of me sleeping, cooking, showering. The timestamps went back weeks, confirming my worst fear. Someone had been watching me long before I ever found the cameras. And then there was the last file, a video recorded just 1 hour ago. In the grainy footage, I saw myself sitting on Rachel's couch, the same image that had been texted to her. But the video wasn't filmed through a window. It was filmed from inside the apartment. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The police swept through Rachel's apartment immediately, checking every possible hiding place, but they found nothing. No cameras, no sign of forced entry. Whoever had been watching me was always one step ahead. That night, I barely slept, my mind racing with unanswered questions. Who was doing this? What did they want? And most terrifying of all, I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Rachel. The idea that someone had been inside her apartment, watching us, recording us, was unbearable. The police stayed for hours, sweeping every corner. They found nothing. No cameras, no hidden devices, no sign of forced entry. It was like whoever did this had vanished into thin air. But I knew better. This person wasn't gone. They were still watching. The next morning, Detective Morris called me with an update. We traced the email and the phone number. Both are dead ends, he said, frustration clear in his voice. But we did find something in the footage from the USB. I held my breath. In one of the clips, there's a brief reflection in a window. Morris continued. It's distorted, but we're enhancing the image. We think it might be our guy. That should have been comforting. It wasn't. Because as I listened to him, I noticed something strange in Rachel's apartment. Her closet door. It was open. Just a crack. Rachel always kept it shut. Always. My stomach twisted. I gripped my phone tightly and stood up. Everything okay? Rachel asked. I nodded slowly, forcing my face to stay neutral. I didn't want to alarm her. With my free hand, I reached toward the closet door. My fingers trembled as I pushed it open. It was empty, nothing but clothes. But as I exhaled in relief, my gaze fell to the floor. And my blood ran cold. The dust. There was a perfectly clean space in the dust-covered wooden floorboards, like something had been there. Something big, like a camera, or a person. My breath caught in my throat. I took a slow step back and turned to Rachel, trying to keep my voice steady. Rach, I whispered. When's the last time you checked your closet? She frowned. I don't know. A few days ago? I swallowed hard. That wasn't good enough. I grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the front door. We need to go. Now. She resisted. What? Why? There was something in your closet. Someone. Rachel's eyes widened. That was all it took. She didn't ask questions, just grabbed her keys and followed me out the door. We ran straight to my car. As soon as we were inside, I locked the doors and called Detective Morris. You need to get back here, I told him. I think he was in Rachel's closet, and he left something behind. The police arrived in minutes, swarming Rachel's apartment. This time, they found something. Behind the closet wall, hidden behind a thin, removable panel, was a crawl space, a secret passage that led directly to the ventilation system. It was just big enough for a person to squeeze through. Someone had been living inside the walls. That was how they placed the cameras. That was how they got in and out without leaving a trace. And that was how they filmed the video from inside the apartment, without ever stepping through the front door. But the worst part? The space was empty. Whoever had been hiding there was gone. Rachel and I didn't go back to the apartment. We stayed in a hotel that night, too shaken to be alone. At around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. You found my hiding spot. A second later, another message came through. A photo. It was me, lying in bed, from inside my hotel room. I couldn't breathe. My fingers clenched around my phone as I stared at the message, my skin crawling with a mix of horror and rage. He was here, in the hotel, watching me. Rachel was still asleep in the bed next to mine, completely unaware. I forced myself to move, to act. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. Instead, I slid out of bed as quietly as possible and checked the door. The lock was still bolted. The windows? Sealed shut. How did he get in? I gritted my teeth, my mind racing. He had to have planted a camera before we got here. That meant... I scanned the room, my heart pounding. The nightstand lamp, the vent above the bed, the TV, the mirror. A cold sweat broke over my skin as I slowly stepped toward it. My own reflection stared back, wide-eyed and terrified. But something wasn't right. I leaned in closer. A tiny black dot was nestled in the top corner. A camera. He had been watching the whole time. I didn't hesitate. I yanked the mirror off the wall and smashed it against the ground, shattering glass everywhere. Rachel bolted upright with a scream. "What the hell?" she shouted, scrambling back. "He's here," I whispered. "He's been watching." Rachel's face paled as she processed what I said. She leapt out of bed, grabbing her phone. "We have to go, now." But before we could move, a knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks on the hotel room door. Rachel and I froze. Then a voice. Low. Familiar. "I see you." I grabbed Rachel's wrist and yanked her toward the bathroom, slamming the door shut and locking it. My hands trembled as I called 911. The operator picked up immediately. 911, what's your emergency? "There's someone outside our hotel room," I whispered urgently. "He's been stalking us. He left cameras. He's watching us right now." The operator's tone turned serious. "Stay where you are. Officers are on their way. Do not open the door for anyone." Outside, the knocks continued. Then, silence. Rachel and I didn't dare move. We barely breathed. Minutes passed. Then, sirens. A pounding at the hotel door, followed by shouts. "Police!" I cracked the bathroom door open just in time to see 2 uniformed officers storm into the room, guns drawn. They checked every inch of the space. But there was no one there. No sign of forced entry. No footprints. Just the shattered mirror and the tiny hidden camera, blinking like an unspoken threat. But that wasn't the worst part. One of the officers, a younger guy with a grim expression, found something taped to the outside of our door. A Polaroid picture. It showed Rachel and me, sleeping, from inside the bathroom. Someone had been in the room with us, while we slept. Rachel and I were done playing defense. The police moved us to a different hotel, and Detective Morris put us under surveillance. The stalker had escalated. This wasn't just about cameras anymore. He had been in the same room as us, breathing the same air. And he wanted us to know it. But how? How had he been inside without breaking in? The answer came the next morning. A call from Detective Morris. "We enhanced the reflection from the footage on the USB," he said. "It's not clear, but we think we know how he got in." I gripped the phone. "Tell me." Morris sighed. "Your stalker. He's been posing as a maintenance worker. That's how he got into your house, into Rachel's apartment, into the hotel. He has access to places normal people don't. That's how he's always one step ahead." I nearly dropped the phone. It made perfect sense. The contractor I had hired. The guy who installed the drywall. Ethan. He had never left. He had just changed disguises. And he was still out there. Watching. Waiting. Later that night, Detective Morris called again. "We think we have him," he said. "Surveillance footage from the hotel caught a man in a maintenance uniform entering the hallway near your room. He never checked in, never booked a room, he just disappeared." I exhaled, relieved. "So, what now?" "We've put out an APB. We'll find him." For the first time in days, I felt hope. But then, my phone buzzed. A new text. I stared at it, my stomach sinking. "Unknown number. You think they can stop me?" Another message came through, a live video feed. I clicked it. My breath caught in my throat. It was me, right now, sitting on the bed, holding my phone. Someone was watching me from inside the room. I couldn't move. My heart pounded in my ears as I stared at the live feed on my phone. It was impossible. But there it was. A real-time video of me sitting in the hotel room, holding my phone, my face frozen in fear. Someone was here, right now. Rachel must have noticed my expression because she leaned in. "What's wrong?" I turned the phone toward her. She gasped, clapping a hand over her mouth. "Where is he filming from?" she whispered. I forced myself to move, my eyes darting around the room. The walls, the vents, the mirrors. Then I saw it. The closet door. It was open. Just a crack. I shot up from the bed, grabbing the closest thing I could find. A heavy hotel lamp. My breath came in sharp gasps as I reached for the door handle. Rachel stood behind me, gripping my arm. "Are you crazy? Wait for the cops." But I couldn't. I needed to know. With one swift motion, I yanked the door open and swung the lamp. Nothing. The closet was empty. But something was off. Rachel flicked on the light and we both saw it. The back panel of the closet was slightly misaligned. A hidden space. I dropped the lamp and pressed my hands against the wood. It wobbled under my touch. My breath caught as I pushed harder. The panel swung open. Behind it was a narrow crawl space that extended into darkness. The walls were covered in exposed pipes, and the air smelled damp. Old. Rachel covered her mouth. Oh my God. This was how he was getting in. A hidden network of tunnels. I shone my phone flashlight inside, half expecting to see someone staring back. Nothing. But on the floor, there was something small. A cell phone. I picked it up with shaking hands. The screen was unlocked, displaying the same live feed from my hotel room. This wasn't just his phone. It was his camera. He had been filming us in real time and left the phone behind to taunt us. That meant one thing. He wasn't in the closet anymore. He was already somewhere else. Watching, waiting. And he was always one step ahead. The police arrived within minutes. They sealed off the hotel and searched the tunnels, but the stalker was long gone. The only thing they found was another Polaroid picture, taped inside the hidden passage. This one showed me and Rachel standing at the closet looking inside. It had been taken just seconds earlier. He had still been there when I opened the door. He must have been right behind us. Rachel sobbed. I could barely stand. Detective Morris ran a hand through his hair, his face grim. "He's escalating. He's playing games." I gritted my teeth. "Then let's end them." Morris looked at me sharply. "What do you mean?" I turned the stalker's phone over in my hands. "He always knows where we are, what we're doing, because we're playing defense, but if we set a trap..." Morris narrowed his eyes. "You want to lure him out?" Rachel stared at me in horror. "Are you insane?" "Rachel, he's not going to stop. No matter where we go, he finds us. The only way to end this is to make him come to us." Morris exhaled. "It's risky. But it's our best shot." The detective studied me for a long moment. Then, finally, he nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's catch this bastard." That night, the plan was set in motion. We checked into a new hotel, acting like nothing was wrong. The police rigged the room with hidden cameras of their own. Every exit was covered, every movement recorded. And then we waited. For hours, nothing happened. No messages, no signs of him. But then, at 3:07 a.m., my phone buzzed. A new text. Unknown number. You think you can outsmart me? Another message followed. A photo of me, lying in bed, just like before. Except this time, I wasn't in bed. I was sitting in a chair, staring at my phone. My veins turned to ice. My head snapped toward the bed. And that's when I saw him. A dark figure lurking in the corner of the room. He was already here. The figure in the corner didn't move. Neither did I. For a long, suffocating second, the world was silent. Then, the overhead light flickered. And in that brief, stuttering glow, I saw him. Ethan. His face was pale, sunken. His lips curled into a slow, deliberate smile. You should have just played along, he whispered. I tried to scream, but my throat locked up. My body refused to move. He wasn't supposed to be here. The police were watching. The room was rigged. So why weren't they bursting in? I forced my eyes toward the door. It was still bolted. Had he been in here the whole time? Ethan tilted his head as if reading my thoughts. You let me in, he murmured. You always let me in. Then he lunged. I barely had time to react. His hands closed around my throat, cold and impossibly strong. I thrashed, gasping, my vision blurring. Somewhere in the distance, I heard Rachel screaming. Then, gunshots. The room exploded with noise. The force of it knocked Ethan back, his grip loosening just enough for me to fall to the floor. I coughed, clutching my throat as the door burst open, and Detective Morris and his team rushed in, guns raised. Ethan staggered, clutching his side. Blood seeped through his shirt, but his eyes never left mine. Even as he collapsed, he smiled. Then, in a whisper only I could hear, I'll always be watching. His body stilled. The police swarmed him, shouting, checking his pulse. But I already knew. He was gone. The days that followed felt like a blur. Rachel and I were placed in protective custody, and the police uncovered everything. Ethan had been stalking me for years. It wasn't just my house. It was every place I had ever lived. Everywhere I had ever gone. The hidden tunnels, the cameras. He had mapped out my entire life like a twisted game. And worst of all, he wasn't working alone. The police found dozens of encrypted messages on his phone. Conversations with someone else. Someone who knew my routines. Someone who had helped him stay ahead. The messages stopped exactly 1 hour after Ethan was shot. The last one read, "Don't worry, I'll finish what you started." I left town the next day. Rachel and I cut ties, changed numbers. I tried to rebuild my life. But no matter where I went, I could never shake the feeling that someone was watching. Then, last night, I received a package. There was no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid picture of me, sitting in my new apartment, staring at this package, and in the reflection of the window behind me, a shadow, watching, waiting.